You would love this shit that I wrote. You would love it. If you have the patience to read, just read a couple sentences.
Okay. Can I read it on the show?
Yeah.
I slid into the bed sheets with him as I caressed his buttocks. Is this what you... Oh,
scroll
wrong.
to the left.
Okay, scroll.
Yeah.
Oh, the survival book.
Oh, yeah.
A different one.
Man.
The Black Rifle Podcast starts now.
Dude, we could do a whole program with our brains and a fucking whiteboard and a writer. We could literally line out an entire series with character developments and then turn it into a fucking Netflix series. Dude, it would blow the fuck up.
Everything I
shit.
did with Jay, like he would pick my fucking brain. That's the entire fucking series is like built on like shit that I was thinking about.
See,
how
much of that was that your idea? I feel like a lot of that was your idea.
All of it.
See,
all of it. Like a bit. I've got that's the one thing. Is like I don't really care because I've got lots of ideas. Like when you're halfway intelligent, you can just come up with new ideas.
I have 6 chapters on an entire book. I have like 50,000 words on a book work of fiction.
What is it?
It's the fake Rolex. Just can't afford a real Rolex. It's a two-door.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Tudor.
Yeah, that's fucking cool. I don't know.
It's a basically the same subsidiary. It's like the company that makes Rolex. They use. Woohoo!
Hey, have you been following? Hey, Mike, have you been following any of that like national news shit that we can talk about?
Yeah, all of it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I figured as much.
You would love this shit that I wrote. You would love it. If you
fucking
have the
love this
patience
shit
to
in
read,
general.
just read a couple sentences.
Okay. Can I read it on the show?
Yeah.
I slid into the bed sheets with him as I caressed his buttocks. Is this what you... Oh,
scroll
wrong.
to the left.
Okay, scroll.
Yeah.
Oh, the survival book.
Oh, yeah.
A different one.
Man.
Walker slid his right hand off the steering wheel, down to his carbine and wedged between his seat. Wedged between his seat and the center console. He slowly pushed the webbing off his hand into the back strap of the grip, squeezing down to optimize the speed on target once committed.
Did you forget how to read?
No.
You're just into it.
No, I don't have my glasses. So it's fucking like when I don't have my glasses, I gotta like fucking like really look at something, and it's not. I didn't forget how to read.
What watch are you wearing? You wearing a different watch today?
No, same, man. It's
Phoenix 5X.
It's a Phoenix. No, I think this might be the 6. I'm not sure. It's the same one. It's the Delta Solar, which is whatever. Who cares?
Let me see.
It's a fucking great watch.
So I had the last one I had with this was the 5X, and I didn't like it because the battery was whack. But I heard they improved it. You got the Tactics Delta,
and it has solar. So
yeah,
when
it charges
the
passively.
15 minutes that I get to see sunlight every day outside of the office, it's like really just
you're looking a little pale, man.
Yeah, most of that is like I've been taking. I can't even come up with a good joke. I wish I was. I was going to talk about how it's like sitting in ice or something, but I don't do anything, man. I go like from the office back to hang out with my kids in the house and hang out with my family, and I just go back and forth. I don't do anything.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, I love it.
Did you run today?
No, dude. I rolled my ankle so badly that it's really fucking swollen and it hurts.
Would you roll it? Running?
No.
Nothing cool.
I was stepping out of my sauna. I was pushing. That's how old I am.
Oh,
so
wow.
So I have this sauna and I run the heat up to like 195, 197 degrees.
Oh, wow.
And I had like 5 more minutes left, and I was pushing myself to get 5 more minutes out of it. And I'm already feeling a little bit woozy. I'm like, oh, come on. And I'm waiting for the time to run out, and I'm trying to get out of it because, dude, I was on the precipice of passing out. I stepped out and I face planted right outside of this thing, and I'm laying on the ground. I'm just drenched in sweat, and there's water all over the floor because I'm like drenched in sweat.
Because of the heat, or because you rolled your ankle?
Because the heat, because I'd been in there for
Oh my
45
God,
minutes or
man.
something.
Don't die in the sun. That's not a cool story.
No,
That's
I'm
not
not
the way
going
go
to.
out.
I was standing there next to the door, and I was just trying to get out really, really too fast, and I got out, and because I'll go back and forth, which is not because of these trends where people participate in what we'll call them the cold plunge and the sauna, which is fine, by the way. I love a wide variety of people getting turned on to healthy things. I think you should push yourself to do very difficult things. You should do that on the regular. I think you should do it every day, actually. But I've had a sauna here in the office for like 7 years.
Yeah.
In the gym, we have the gym out back, you know that, and then I've got one at the house too.
Which one do you have at the house?
Whatever. I
Is
just
it an
order.
infrared sauna?
Yeah, but it's also it also has a little heater in it, so it has both.
So you can get the extra temperature.
Yeah, if it's infrared, it only goes up to like 140. You gotta run the temperature up to like 200, and then you turn on the infrared. That's how you hack it. But let me put out the disclaimer right now. I am not a medical doctor. Do not take my sauna advice.
Yeah.
Do not take my sauna advice, and definitely do not take my cold plunge advice either, because I broke ice on that thing this morning to get in there. Oh my gosh. When you do that first thing in the morning, and that's one of the things I've been trying to do, is just like pop the ice on that thing and jump in before I've had coffee, before I do anything else.
First thing.
Yeah, because it sucks. I've been trying to do these things where I'm like, this sucks. I don't want to do it. I'm just going to go do it. I've had this theory for like 20 years, and it's do the things that you know suck. Just do them, because and what I think about them as is their confidence targets. So they're psychological confidence targets, just like you would taking your Indige out, and like, hey, this is a dry hole, who cares?
Yeah.
But we're gonna run it. We're gonna see how it goes. It's an easy target. Build your confidence targets and then knock them down, because when you do have to endure through, well, we'll say a mundane task or something you really don't want to do, you've already built the muscle. Come to find out, and somebody sent me this because I was talking to him about it. They sent me this podcast that Huberman had done, where it's actually a section of the brain. You have to develop that section of the brain.
It's like a muscle. You got to work it.
Yeah, you got to work it. So going back 20 years, some of the things like I did early on just to make myself suffer and suck, not because I'm a sadist by any stretch of the imagination. I love being comfortable. I love it. It's just when it's time to get it on, you have to train and get your reps in on those difficult tasks, because it makes the difficult tasks seem a little bit easier. So
you're doing it every morning then?
Oh, I do all kinds of shit every day that's like, man, I don't want to do this, but I'm just going to do it.
I need to do more of that. You need to send me the company. I use a sweat tent, but I'm just tired of stoking fires. Sweat tent's great.
Yeah.
Great product. I've used it for a year now, but I'm just tired of like constantly having to like start a fire and do all the things.
You have to start a fire in a sweat tent?
Yeah, it's not. It's basically it's basically a insulated tent setup, and when you set it up, you have to start the fire. You have to stoke the lava rocks with water to get the temperature up.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly reasonable. It doesn't take a lot of time. I'm just tired of going to buy wood and do all the things.
Yeah.
I'm just lazy. When it comes to that kind of thing, I want to wake up and just have it preset, warm it up, and then get in it. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, there's a difference between doing the things you don't want to do because they're difficult and just doing the things that are just mundane and stupid, right? And some of the things I used to do early on is I stopped wearing socks when I was 18, so I stopped wearing socks. I never used the heater in my car.
Yeah.
I got rid of like TVs. So I didn't have a TV until probably our first daughter was 2 or 3 years old. So I didn't have a TV my entire adult life.
Smart.
And so just like taking away all of your distractions, taking away all your comforts, learning how to be content with just what you have, and just kind of it's not even suffering. just living within what I
Simplifying?
would say this really comfortable life that we have already. I'm just taking a few things away. It's not a big deal. It's just not a big deal. I still think TV is just a fucking colossal waste of time.
Super waste of time.
God, I hate it so much. So
I
I've
do
been
love
trying not to.
YouTube though. I'm addicted to YouTube, but now I'm getting to the point where I've like reached the end of the internet and I've digested all the Porsche 911 air cool content, all of the Rolex and vintage watch content. Now I'm watching like Hayabusas.
I don't even know what that is.
It's like a motorcycle. I'm watching motorcycle content of these guys running from cops, and I'm super entertained by it. And so I've digested every video of guys running from cops, and I'm like rooting for them. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like my brain needs that as an exercise, like hygiene. I just need mental flossing.
God, I love YouTube.
It's great.
Love YouTube. There's so many different things you can go down the rabbit hole on YouTube, and
It's dark. You can get really dark.
I only keep really light. I've been doing a lot of I would say a lot of work on philosophy, just in general, just kind of like general concept.
What does that come from? Because you've been doing a lot more of that.
Oh man,
even taking notes.
I love it. It's something that I really just love. I love philosophy, and I think a lot of people will get into philosophy, or people will get into philosophy early in life, and then they love to say philosophy because it makes them feel important and that they're intellectually aggrandizing themselves in some way. It's one of the only things that I can continue to read and go back to and read and read and read, and I get zero fatigue in it. I get more creative power. It fires me up. I have this whole thing in the morning. It's kind of the morning ritual where, I'll work out or sometime in the morning, like I'll get the girls up and get them ready for school. And sometime I'll work out and then I'll write. So I've been writing a lot more.
You brought your journal to Moab.
Yeah.
And your journal's like not like a pocket journal. It's like a sketchbook.
Yeah.
And you're writing like big, like with a crayon. And it's like really huge
it's crayon,
words.
really
I'm like,
big.
why is this so
really
big?
I'm trying to figure out what I want is to document my thoughts in my journey for my kids. It has nothing to do with me wanting to publish my book. It has nothing to do with any of that shit. It has everything to do with my grandfather left this journal, and I got to read through some of it.
Wow.
But he didn't have a lot. There wasn't a lot there.
Yeah.
But he was talking about his experiences in the Aleutian Islands when he was in World War II, and there was like a couple paragraphs. I was like, "Fuck, man! I wanted to. If he
books
would just,
of that,
dude, I wanted books of what he was thinking and what he was feeling, and like that's what I wanted." I also know that the way that I journal is, and it's different. I'll draw pictures. So like I'll draw a picture of something that I'm thinking about, and I write letters to my kids. So I'll write like full 2 or 3 pages on how meaningful, their lives have been and how impactful they've been on me and what I'm thinking and how much that I love them and like what I was thinking about when I put them to bed that night. And so when they're 30 or whenever it is, they're going to have this entire, like, if they read it, if they don't read it,
they will read it.
They will read it.
They'll throw away everything else, but that's what they'll keep.
And they're going to see, my misspellings. They're going to see, the grammar, I'm going to cross it out. Like I intentionally, that's the other thing, is I intentionally don't erase a lot. So I'll just roll with it. One of the things that I really, really recommend, because it changed my life in some ways, is Lewis and Clark had journals, and you can read through those journals. Those motherfuckers couldn't spell to save their ass.
Oh yeah,
and they were highly educated men.
Yeah, the most educated at the time.
He was drawing, pictures of flowers and animals and the things that were going on, and it was just this living document of their life and their what their thoughts are and how do they think about different aspects. So this has been a whole thing for me where my kids are too young for me to talk to them about endurance and for them to really comprehend what does it mean to have intellectual endurance, physical endurance. Why am I doing the things that I am with them? Like, one, how much do they mean to me? And and then to have years of documented, things that I've written about them. And I'll write little poems and I'll write little things that mean a lot to me for them, and I'll address them in the journal. So I'll, like, each one of my kids, I'll be like, this is for you, Rowan, or whatever it is. And it's accountability in the perspective of we are mortal humans. All of us will be the great equalizer is birth and death, right?
Yeah.
It's birth and death. What we do in between here is up to us. I truly believe that. But I know I'm not going to be here forever. But what will be here forever is a whole library of whether, they're just thoughts and feelings. Like, what is the meaning of life from my perspective now? What am I thinking about as far as how can I help define them? How am I defining myself? And none of it has to do with, like, I don't know, like wealth or social status or anything. It's all, like, very, very meaningful things.
Or even this podcast. I mean, imagine if you could listen to your dad.
Yeah.
When you were a child or a toddler, talk about things and be able to listen to that in your vehicle or when you're working out or when you wake up. It's like, I think often people forget these podcasts are timeless because they're in the Ethernet forever. Internet forever. And I think that's what's cool about technology in a way. I thought about this as well. Like, I wouldn't mind doing a devotional or some kind of daily thing for my children. So when I'm gone, they could either hear my voice, plug in to the an iPod or whatever device, just push a button on their head and listen to my voice, whatever exists at the time, Neuralinked. And I think it would be really cool because, like you said, when we're gone, that's it. And what you typically leave behind is just throwing it in the trash. It really is. I mean, all this tangible shit. The only things that really last are, I think, watches, knives, and guns. And even then, I mean, how many guns does my son really want? Does he want 50 of his dad's guns, or does he want the one that meant the most? And so I think that's really cool, man. That's really thoughtful of you, because typically you're not thoughtful and you're selfish. So that's cool that you're actually doing that.
It's, I firmly agree. I think that, being forced out of my selfish nature, being forced out of it. I think it was interesting. I read comments the other day. I think it's funny. I read comments on Mike and I did the focal point, which is something new that you came up with that Andy and I are both kind of helping with. I would say we're the clowns in your circus. Yeah. Would that be inappropriate?
The clowns in the car.
Oh yeah. Okay, the clowns in the car in the circus.
Yeah, I'm just driving.
And I read through some of the comments, which I do every now and again.
Yeah.
Typically, I don't.
You should never do that.
No, but I wanted to see kind of where the reaction was, and I think it's funny.
We're in our pajamas.
Yeah.
I mean, we just
wearing Birkenstocks in today.
Those are legit.
Yeah, dude, these are great. And by the way, they're fucking comfortable. And I think it's funny when some of the comments were, "Look at that fucking dude's wearing Birkenstocks." I'm like, hey, that's cool. And if you're such a mental midget where you think that the clothing that you wear defines you as a person, like
is that a liberal thing or something? Like what?
Yeah. I think
Birkenstock?
I think
or
typically,
hippie.
Yeah, it's like, and by the way, I am, because I'm into radical freedom, and there's a lot of people.
You're a mountain man. That's what mountain men wear.
I'm into radical freedom, and I also think coloring outside of the lines in society is actually really good. And I do things sometimes just to like shake people out of their normal paradigms in a way where it's like a good example is I wear a uniform. I wear a hoodie, a t-shirt, jeans. That's kind of my uniform.
Yeah.
New Balance running shoes, hoodie and jeans. That's my uniform.
Yeah.
One, I work in a building where people work for a living, so I never want there to be a difference in what I would say is definable culture between what executives and people that work in a warehouse or work. And I also don't want to create an environment where people think that this is a collared shirt environment.
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's, it's about the substance of our work. It's about the character of the individual. It's not about the fucking cool Egyptian cotton that you're wearing.
Yeah.
It's actually, who the fuck cares?
It's coffee.
Yeah, it's coffee.
Should be fun.
And yeah, I wear them. I love them. They're fucking comfortable. They're really comfortable. So
where do you think that comes from?
The Birkenstocks, German.
Like, I don't get like there's new levels of this that I've seen. Like I used to wear on the podcast in my basement. Sometimes I didn't even wear shoes because I'm Korean and I don't like shoes. I don't like my kids laying on the carpet, smelling the bottom of somebody's shoe.
It's gross.
But all the nitpicking, doesn't it get just exhausting for people?
I go back.
Shut the fuck up.
I go back to this. I talked about it on Rogan's episode. I go back to this.
That was a good podcast, by the way.
Did you listen to it?
I listened to the whole thing. I rarely listen to. I mean, committing to 2 to 3 hours of a podcast for me nowadays is pretty tough because I'm not traveling as much. Yeah. But I rarely listen to every guest. But I listened to that podcast in its totality. I think I was on a trip to somewhere in Montana, I think. And it was a great podcast. Good
we talked about you.
Good insight.
We talked about you.
Yeah, a little bit about prepared.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About me being a domestic terrorist. Everybody's like, God, that's what you're known for. I'm like, God, I want to be known for.
I don't know. I don't know where it comes from. I go back to, and it's sad to say, but I go back to kind of the data, which is 16% of the American population has below an 85 IQ. And
is that true? Is that the stat? What is it? 16% have below a what?
85. Which 85 is the cutoff line for military service. So you can't serve in the military.
And I've served with some dummies.
Yeah.
In basic training.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Hey, dude. Like your intellectual capacity disqualifies you from flipping burgers.
Wow.
At a McDonald's. So you have to think there's a huge percentage of people. If you break that down to 350 million people, give or take a couple pennies, out there in the United States, man, that's what, 52 million people, give or take a couple, right? So that's a lot of people that I think they're locked into this paradigm, and they're in their own echo chambers, and they're being gaslit by the extremes either way. They're saying, I have to do this a certain way. I have to live my life a certain way. I have to vote a certain way. I have to participate in a specific political party. I have to, drive a certain truck. I have to look a certain way. And
Punisher skull on the back of that truck.
Yeah. It's like you put that fucking Punisher skull. It's funny going to the Punisher skull because I think it is funny. There's this guy. He used to put him on everything, and in Afghanistan, he used to put him on everything. And I was like, bro, the only people you're punishing is the people that have to look at that bullshit every day. Why the fuck are you putting it on everything?
Like, you're actually spray painting and designing like a thing to do like, who cares? Like, what are we doing right now?
Everybody painted their vehicles on their way into Iraq, right? And they were like putting skulls and crossbones and all this crazy shit. You know what I painted on our truck?
A dildo?
I should have.
A Birkenstock.
A fucking question mark. Because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't fucking know. They might kill us all. Who knows? But it's like, at the end of the day...
What are we doing?
At the end of the day, it's not... It's most of the guys that are posturing with an inordinate amount of tough guy bullshit are the guys that have the most significant psychological, emotional problems with the way that they're dealing with the world. And
it's deep.
Honestly,
it's sad.
They had fucking bad parents, man. Like
they didn't have a dad.
Yeah, they didn't have a badass dad. Like my dad is a badass. He's still 70 fucking years old. He's still falling fucking trees. He's like can drive a fucking logging truck, still drive a boat. Like, dude, the guy is a badass.
Yeah.
And he didn't raise me to be he didn't raise me to be a conformist, which is just go lockstep over the edge with a bunch of other fucking people, regardless of how smart they might sound. Which is like going your own direction, making your own way, living radically free, which I truly believe. It's man's search for meaning. It's how do we define ourselves, which, I think those are the big, deep philosophical answers that we have the opportunity to educate ourselves and curate our own existence without following a bunch of other people, which is always the reason why I've been a reluctant leader. I'm not like, it's not something that I want. It's not something I've sought out, but I've always kind of been in charge. It's like, hey, by default, you're going to be in charge, you know, the company, or if I was downrange or doing something else, like I was always kind of like the guy. I never really wanted to be. I don't feel like I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
I don't. Like, I just want to kind of be me.
Yeah, but that's that guy. Because a lot of guys aren't that guy. And so they just don't ever rise to the occasion.
There's a lot of dudes. Have you noticed there's a lot of dudes that are out there, like they talk about how fucking great, like, you know, the grind. You got to grind, son. You got to grind hard. What are those guys called? They're like
the pants those guys wear too. You can see like the outline of your wiener. Stop wearing those pants on stage.
Tight, shiny shirts and weird fucking pants, and like there's so much gel and
so
like,
exhausting,
it's so weird.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, God, you got to grind, man. You got to grind, and I'm like, okay.
I don't get that world. I'm just not that it's not valuable, because I just think I was thinking the other day I was doing something completely unrelated to me thinking about this. And I was thinking about all the people that talk about investing in yourself. And it's true. A lot of people don't invest in themselves, right? They invest in everything else. They invest in alcohol. They invest in women. Like Hunter Biden invests $600,000 supposedly in chicks.
Holy shit.
And then an additional couple $100,000 in adult entertainment. Porn's free, but he somehow found like an account that you have to subscribe to times a lot of those, and spends $1 million like on women. And so he should probably invest in yourself. And this self-help kind of category, I like it for business, because I read, when I started my business, I read every book I could get my hands on. But there are people out there who are offering, Andy Frisella is a good example. Like, Andy Frisella has built $1 billion business, so he knows how to do it from scratch, from 0 to 1. And so that's valuable. But the whole world of the people who like talk about crushing it, and I put Gary Vee in this category.
Yeah.
I'm not the big. I like Gary Vee. Like, some of the business stuff he has is very practical and very, very valuable. But that whole model, I don't even know what that is. But it's like this thing where people pay to go hear somebody telling you suck, and you need to be better. But the reality is, my opinion on that, there are a lot of people who need that, I guess.
Yeah.
And they need to wake up and be told, hey, you piece of shit, untuck your balls and like go into the world and crush it. And I'm like, I just don't need that. I mean, I don't think none of us, based on our experience in the military, because we got the military to do that for us in a way, and it instilled in us, and likely prior to that, our dads instilled it in us.
Probably.
I know my parents certainly did. But it's just a weird world, right? I mean, that whole world is just weird.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys that are compensating. I think there's a lot of guys that are chasing wealth just for wealth's sake, because they think that's going to provide them fulfillment. They're going to say, well, I'm wealthy, so then I'm fulfilled. And that's not going to get it done.
No.
It actually is not going to get it done. And I think there's a lot of people that have been misled, and this isn't a condemnation of capitalism. I think when you're teed up to pursue just these material possessions, that at the end of the day you can't take them with you, and if you're still a piece of shit, like, it's just going to accelerate your ability to be a piece of shit. So you're just going to be a rich piece of shit. And if you're not a good person and people don't like you, and you're not living by some type of moral code, and I think that's where organized religion comes in. And there's different versions, obviously, of Christianity that people can participate in, whatever religion that they're into, but it's at least rooted in philosophy, and there's a concept of virtue that people can go and be reminded on a weekly basis from somebody that is talking about ethics, virtue, morality, mortality, and they're giving lessons through a book. and I think it's a great way for people to at least have an azimuth to follow. Do I agree with all of my neighbors that are going to church every Sunday? Well, no, because some of them might be like Southern Baptist, and some might be LDS, and some might be this. There's not like a unifying piece to this other than, hey, we're all following the Bible in some version, and it's not making them typically worse. It's making them better. So I think there's something to be said about understanding what is virtue. How do you define that? And then really trying to seek other people around how can you help become more virtuous? How can you help me? I think that's probably where Jordan Peterson comes in. I think he's probably one of the most prevalent public faces when it comes to philosophy right now, at least. I think
he's super religious.
He's very religious.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's great.
Yeah, me too.
No, I think it's awesome. I think
it's better than religion being the dollar or chasing money. That's so gross, man. Rich people who chase money typically never succeed, but also they always fail in life because they'll make, categorically they'll be deemed the wealthy guy, and then their life sucks. And all of this comes full circle. Everybody goes through it. All these popular people, like I've been listening to Rogan's all the wrestlers.
Yeah.
And so I went down a YouTube freaking deep dark hole in YouTube wrestling documentaries. Don't ever do that.
Really?
Well, if you just look it up, you'll find every wrestler you grew up with that you saw, and there's a documentary on them, and they're all great. And then you waste 3 years of your life watching documentaries on Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, who's a passionate, really kind guy, and you're like crying over a wrestler at midnight when you should be sleeping, and you're like, what the fuck? I'm daydreaming about Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
But you look at all their lives, and they chase popularity, and they chased this dream, and at the end of the day, they lost everything that was important to them because they committed to the grind that was supposed to make them wealthier and forgot about all the things that truly made them happy, and with rare exception. I mean, Roddy Piper was one of the rare exceptions where he always stayed tethered to his wife and his children and their little farm.
Really?
And
I didn't know
which
that.
is crazy because he was one of my favorite wrestlers, and I liked him because of the character he played. But he was a salt of the earth, good human being, Canadian farmer, and just like had this secretive life that he lived that was just his wife and his kids, and he never lost sight of that. And so he grew up, and his kids grew up to be really good people. And then when he passed away after he got submitted into the Hall of Fame, it was tragic. But wrestling for him gave him more perspective on living a deeper, more valuable life in his personal life, when other guys did the complete opposite. Like, the reason Hulk Hogan's still alive is Hulk Hogan, who went to do Japanese wrestling overseas, became very disciplined. He didn't drink. He didn't do drugs. He didn't do all the chasing.
Never did roids?
He did roids.
Oh,
He did plenty of that.
I was gonna say.
But even, I mean, this dude was like naturally 6'7", 300 plus pounds.
Huge guy.
But he never subscribed to all the shit the other guys were doing. And he became a mentor for all the other wrestlers that were just losing their minds because they were getting a little bit of wealth and completely blowing their wad. So Hulk Hogan is like some of these classic rock and rollers that are still around. They didn't follow the prescription that everybody else was taking, and they kind of were outliers in their own way. And it's like, sure, you could chase money, you could chase ass, you could do all the things, but what is it going to end in? Well, there's plenty of historical chronicled facts on how this is going to roll for you.
Yeah.
And all these dudes who chase the wrong people, who comment in the sections just talking shit. It's like, dude, stop being a worthless sack of shit.
I think that's the biggest point. Is like that's such a waste of time and energy.
Oh my God.
In the sense of you can either broker in. We've talked about it before. It's like toxic fuel or positive fuel.
Yeah.
You can either broker in positive fuel, or you can broker in toxic fuel. Toxic fuel is going to pull people back. It's going to hold people back. It's going to pull you down. Or you can say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to broker in positive fuel. And this isn't going to turn into some type of like motivational podcast where, now all of a sudden I'm going to give business advice or emotional individual advice. These are the things that I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah.
And these are the things that I'm directly I'm holding myself accountable to. I'm saying I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to participate in these conversations. I think it's a complete and fucking utter waste of time. And more importantly, like, I practice what I preach. This is what I do. So it's like, I'm not going home to some other fucking weird life where, I'm being an asshole to my family, or I'm not, I'm working 80 hours and I'm not spending any time with my kids. Like, if anything, like, I always find more and more opportunities where I can do things with the kids and have more fun with them. And I found a ton of things like, God, man, there's so many different things online. That's the one thing I love about YouTube for dads.
Oh, yeah.
Dude,
awesome.
it is endless, man. It is so many cool things that you can do.
So fun.
I found this channel, and I forget what the name of it is. I'll post it.
That's a
I'll
horrible
pull
start
it up.
to this.
Yeah. It's just
It's awesome
basically
stuff.
science projects.
Is it Rober? Steve
No.
or Mark Rober?
I'll pull it up. It's like Mad Science or
piss?
some shit. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I?
Yeah, of course.
do you have to
Yeah,
pee?
well, no.
You sure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll look it up while you're taking a piss.
You're gonna what?
I'll look it up while you're taking a piss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the real question is what's the difference between a hate crime and a regular just crime, right? So
It's extra.
if you rob somebody, like, if you're a self-loathing white person and you rob other white people, does it make it a hate crime?
That's so weird.
I'm just wondering. I mean, it's a real question. If you're like,
Yeah.
I don't like white people, I'm gonna go Robin Hood, wouldn't that be a hate crime because he didn't like rich people?
Yeah, it's like what's the school? The Tennessee active shooter that went to that Christian school.
Yeah.
I think wait, was it I'm gonna screw this up. It was it a dude trying to be I really don't know.
I don't.
Something.
I do like zero research over there because it's so confusing to me.
I'm so lost in that whole.
The whole thing is so confusing to me. Where if it's too confusing for me, and I truly don't understand, nor can I follow the train of logic.
You check out. You're like,
I just check the fuck out because I'm like,
done.
I don't give two shits anymore.
Yeah.
Like, you've lost me. More importantly, it's not interesting. It's not even interesting. It's not even interesting for a thought exercise.
They just want the attention. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's like, I think most people need. Well, part of this whole goes into the university system, which I want to talk to you about because of Penn, Harvard, all the different professors that came out. Like,
gross.
what a gaggle of just ivory tower idiots.
Pieces of
living shit. So I'm so frustrated with this to begin with, but part of this is the university system has turned into, maybe it hasn't always been this way, but the university system has turned into a place where they have created multiple different disciplines and degrees for people that can't do math and stupid people because they need money and they want money. So I also think that there is a place for these thought exercise people that honestly I don't think they have the creative and intellectual capacity to develop themselves into a no shit degree that should be contributing to success to society. That's my true feeling. When you have to come up with these fucking wazoo philosophies on 1,000 different fucking genders, and you can identify as whatever you want. Like, it's just kind of like, okay, guys, like, the reason we can't follow this conversation is because it's illogical. It doesn't make sense. When you're saying math right now, when they're talking about math it discriminates against people. I'm sorry, math doesn't. Like, math is math. It's black and white for a reason, not in the.
No, whoa,
easy,
whoa,
right?
easy.
Oh
They're
my gosh,
racist.
Yeah, it's when you're trying to devalue things like mathematics. What you're doing is you're feeding into an entire information operation, and you're accelerating the fuel of our enemies to poison the Western tree of logic. That's what you're doing. You're discrediting everything that the world has built in the last 2,500 years, because there's only a handful of people that directly that can benefit from that. Those are our enemies. They are. So I think academia has been 100% co-opted. When I say 100%, to an 80+% degree. Academics have a positive perception of Marxism and communism. So they're overwhelmingly more accepting of communism and Marxism than they are capitalism and a democratic republic. Because part of that, and if we go back in history and we understand what actually has been the circumstance, is the post-Bolshevik revolution from, we'll call it the Soviet Empire. They went to work on the Western academic institutions. What they felt, and I'm summarizing this, was they felt like if they were able to co-opt Oxford and Cambridge, and where the beacons of Western intellectualism in academia, they would influence Harvard, Yale, Stanford, UCLA, the other, we'll call them U.S. Academic institutions. If they sold them the idea that communism was an acceptable political ideology and philosophy, they would also be able to co-opt the other academic institutions in America. This was a long-term information operation built by the KGB post-Bolshevik revolution, implemented and executed over the course of decades. And it's not me. This isn't a fucking conspiracy. You can go online. You can do all the research in the world. And now our academic institutions have bought into this idea that communism is acceptable and cool.
So weird.
And anything that is the perception of an underdog is the right, is ethically and morally correct, which that's not the case. And this is where I start to go back to nature in the context of when the lion eats the gazelle, the lion isn't wrong. He's doing what a lion does. And
he's a racist, prejudiced.
right. Yeah, right. So these academics and their lack, and I'll rant on this for a second, and then I'm going to turn over to you to rant, which is this behavior has to be condemned. And all of their funding, if it were up to me, needs to be pulled. The fact that they will allow people to call for a genocide of anyone, and there's such a disproportionate measure on the scale of what we would call the freedom of speech, which is if there was the reverse happening on those campuses, they would be immediately expelled and they would be searching for charges right now. But you can go out and you can say anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish things on the campuses of those American academic institutions and still be able to attend courses?
Yeah. Get a job.
What? What in the fucking world is going on over there? What backwards reality are they living in? There's no equality. They've completely gone off script. They don't believe in freedom of speech. They don't believe in it because there is freedom of speech, but there's a point in which you pass, and I think the Constitution's fairly specific when it comes to this. When it's directing or causing harm, right? So when you cross the line, and it's okay for you to cross the line against some people, but not others. That's interesting. So these American academic institutions have completely departed from justice. They've said, fuck it. Wisdom's out the fucking window. Justice is out the window. Prudence is out the window. It's all out the window. It doesn't matter anymore.
Education's out the window.
It's just whatever we want and whatever harebrained bullshit we come up with, that's what we're going to be able to put out. And by the way, fuck America if you don't want it. We're going to do it. That's Harvard. Harvard, there's a recent study, and I forget exactly when it was released, but they're talking about acceptable universities believe in freedom of speech and actually have freedom of speech. Harvard ranked last.
Wow.
Last.
Wow.
The pillar, so-called pillar of American academics, doesn't believe in free speech. They believe in freedom for some speech.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we call a fascist state.
Mm.
That's where they are, and that's where I think these extremes, because in order to implement an extreme, it requires a totalitarian state.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a communist or if you're a fascist, either one, it still requires a totalitarian state. It requires fascism. It drifts from utopian into dystopian. That's what it drifts into. And these universities, that's what they want. Because they're smarter than everybody, Mike. They hold the keys to the future of the world because they're fucking smarter than everybody. That's what they believe.
I hate it.
It's gross.
A lot of it has to do with the classification of oppressor versus the oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're classified, if you're a sovereign nation, by the way, and you actually follow democratic values and moral and ethical structure, you're an oppressor. And if you're not, you're the oppressed. And this idea of, for example, free Palestine, it's so catchy as a catchphrase, comment, or emoji now.
Right.
But everybody who does that has no understanding of the complexities of any of the situation. Regardless of their perspective, they've never been out of their own hometown or the town of their university. And so there's lines in the sand, and what they're doing as the presidents of these, UPenn, Harvard, and Yale, or Harvard and in this case MIT, in the congressional hearing, is they're trying to play both sides.
Yeah.
But they don't have a standard when it comes to the uniform and specific code of ethics for the student body, for the code of conduct. Every one of these organizations have a code of conduct that
Absolutely.
that governs specific rules and regulations outside of normal rules of law, right? Which is supposed to refine the picture and create actually a more disciplined protocol at the school level, right? So you have your laws and regulations, and then you have a code of conduct which says specifically outside of the laws and regulations, which we all follow, more refined, we don't do certain things, like call for the genocide of people. Mm-hmm. And the disgusting thing in this congressional hearing is when asked, that was such a... Dude, I've never heard in my life such a disgusting series of responses by three political terrorists. Mm-hmm. I mean, these presidents, both Penn, Harvard, and MIT, literally regurgitated the same exact statement. The only difference between their statements were they said, generally speaking, genocide depends on context. And then the senator, I can't remember where she was from, but she said basically, what do you mean it depends on context? Because we're calling on the genocide, which is very concise. Mm-hmm. I'm calling on the murder and extermination of people.
Yes.
That's like me saying, I'm literally going to murder these people because I'm calling on the genocide of them. It's a synonym. It's a murder, genocide, same thing. So when a student says that, no longer does free speech apply because they're calling on the literal harming and violence of somebody. You're breaking a law. Now the code of conduct should be more refined, more strict. And so she was asking, does it violate your code of conduct for the students? Every single one of them, by the way, it does violate. If you read the code of conduct, which I did for MIT and Harvard, it does violate the code of conduct. The University of or UPenn had, the president of UPenn, after her statement, had to come out the following day and make a statement. Because every single person who donates hundreds of millions of dollars to that institution to keep it alive, because they can't stay alive as a business model just doing the thing. They have to do these things for the alumni who are billionaires to get the money, to lobby. They literally said, we're pulling all of our money unless you come out and you basically give a statement. She gives a statement, it's not good enough, and she resigns. She's told, you need to resign. I'm surprised both Harvard and MIT, they haven't resigned yet because their answers were so disgusting. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been UPenn. But she basically said, so wait a minute, you're telling me genocide isn't violating the code of conduct? She said, it depends on context. And she said, what do you mean? Well, she goes, it depends on if the speech relates to an act. And if it's an act, then it violates. So you're telling me in order to violate the code of conduct, they actually have to have genocide take place? And she's like, essentially, yes. I'm like, dude, what planet are we living in? And now you realize, because the veil has been stripped away.
100%.
This is an indoctrination of people, literally indoctrinating an entire generation of activists. They're not professors, they're not lawyers, they're not doctors, they're activists. So all of these people who get propelled into the world, and now everybody's losing their shit because they're like, well, this should be free speech. And you're saying you won't hire those people? If any of those idiots, they'll never work at Philcraft Survival. If any of those idiots come to Philcraft and I find out they were activists talking about in the same sentence, from the river to the sea, free Palestine, I don't give a fuck who you are. Fuck you. I will never hire you. I won't even come near you. You could sue me. I don't fucking care. You're a radical activist. I don't want radical activists taking care of my children at the hospital. I don't want radical activists representing my company in a legal firm. Fuck you. This is racist. It's prejudice. It's all the things that make America ugly to the world. And you're saying that this is acceptable in your fucking Ivy League elite institution? Fuck you. Fuck all those institutions. I don't agree. Like, I would rather my son learn about entrepreneurship at home than go to a radical institution that's going to make them an indoctrinated activist. Fuck all those people. Yep. And all the people pulling the plug on all their fucking money, good for you, and stick to it.
Yeah, good for you. And I think the reason why MIT and Harvard, they haven't, is because their endowments are billions of dollars.
Billions.
This is the other thing that people don't realize, and I would highly encourage people to do this, which is we still publicly, taxpayer dollars publicly, go into these institutions when they have endowments of billions of dollars. Billions. Why are we paying for anything involving these academic institutions at this point? Once your endowment exceeds a certain point, you don't need government subsidies anymore.
No.
Sorry, you just don't.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with your rant, and thank God these guys were pulling their funding. Thankfully, there's a little bit of logic and responsibility left in people where they say, you know what? No, this isn't okay, and it's not okay to call for the genocide.
How is that acceptable?
How is it?
You should be in fucking handcuffs.
It's not okay. And not only is it not okay, but the fact that they could sit in front of Congress and justify, it's so repulsive. I think at this point, I think you and I are 100% aligned, which is I just want schools to educate. I don't want them to indoctrinate. It's like we need to say education, not indoctrination. I don't need my kids to believe in some half-wit political philosophy that was written by, Karl Marx and pushed through, interpreted, and then distilled and then put into the minds of American youth. By the way, most of the people that are discussing this within the American academic institutions have fucking no understanding of it. No. They would clearly not be able to reference the material, even if given the material for them to cite. The only reason they're doing it is because it's cool. It's socially acceptable for them to believe this, and where I would say within the most academic subcultures, they think this is okay. They would rather believe in Marxism, communism, some version of socialism, some version of this ideology, then do the research themselves to try to understand why this is a failed ideology to begin with and why it will never work. It will never work. It can't work. It goes completely against human psychology. You don't have a collective responsibility where you have lockstep conformity, where everybody doesn't have free will to determine their future. They don't. It doesn't work. So it might in an academic institution, because when I started thinking about this, they're already working within a socialist system. They're in a caste system. So, you know, they start, obviously they work their way through. It doesn't require any outside life experience. So you don't have to drift outside of academia to come back into academia to be a success. Once you're tenured, you can't really be fired. You have a set amount of income. It's government subsidized. So you're already within a pseudo-socialist system from the education system to begin with.
Saying free Palestine.
And where's the carrot and where's the stick? So you can't be fired. You don't get an increased economic incentive based on what's your success rate as an educator? How many kids are increasing their scores past, we'll call it 90%? How many kids are passing or passing each grade at what layer of effectiveness? What is their curiosity level? Like, there's no carrot. You're just moving kids through an entire system. And the stick doesn't exist because you can't be fired. So there's no carrot, there's no stick. You're in a socialist system that's preset based on income. Once you're tenured, you can't be fired. And the only way that you're going to be removed is if you don't conform to an ideological standard that they're essentially preset. And if you're like guys like us that might like to color outside of the lines, you're going to be reprimanded 100%. In the way I think about education now, and my kids go to school, they're not homeschooled, but they've got a great school and I love it. But you drop them off in the morning, they sit at a desk for X amount of hours, and they get, yard time, right? Which is like recess. And they work on buzzers, and then they go to the next station, and they go to the next station, they go to the next station. I also don't want to teach my kids to be factory workers. It's the entire education system, from the Industrial Revolution forward, has been pre-built and designated to essentially develop kids that can conform to a sedentary academic environment with a script of going from station to station to station. So a sedentary factory worker that doesn't like to independently think and critically solve problems is where you'll find the most success within that institution. Well, guys like me and guys like you, dude, I couldn't wait to get outside.
Same.
I was ready to like break shit and fucking like cause havoc.
Out.
Dude, where's the school system for this is also why there's this mythology out there about gender equality and how we as men we're living with the patriarch. However, when you look at college graduates, there's more female college graduates than male college graduates, and it's not the first time in history. This has been happening for the last several years. So women are succeeding in academia at a much higher rate than men. Men are more incarcerated than women. So I think to the tune of 10 times, right? So we're more incarcerated. We're less educated. We have more manual labor jobs. And when you look at success in academia from, K through, we'll call it college, dude, you got to be able to sit down and regurgitate information at a high cycle in order to succeed. Okay? But not everybody fucking learns like that, man. Like, and there's a really, I would say, high percentage of kids that can't learn like that. So now you have to drug them to put them in a chair which is, Adderall or Ritalin or whatever it is, because you're disruptive, you're acting out. What fucking kid wants to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day inside a building reading a book and listening to some pontificating idiot in front of the classroom waiting for a bell so they can go outside and finally see the sun? That's not the way to educate kids. Now, I would say that's a way to educate some kids that are, emotionally, intellectually inclined to learn that way. But I guarantee if we had multiple different ways that we could educate kids, the diagnosis for ADHD would go down. I think the diagnosis for ADHD is because of poor diet and the way that the education system is designed, because it's designed around a group of kids that can succeed academically by sitting on their asses and reading books. That's not the only way people learn. It's just not. And by the way, overwhelmingly, we should look at the data and say there's a huge percentage of people with really high IQs that don't go on to get advanced degrees. Why is that? Why? Well, because they don't want to fucking sit at a desk for 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day. And they just don't learn that way.
That's not a metric for success.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know. We got way off.
You blacked out.
I blacked out. I blacked
Are
out
you
on
okay?
freedom, man. I
You
blacked
all right?
out.
You
I was
need
like,
water?
I think we think about my kids so much, and I think about the way that I learned, the way that they learn. I think about how difficult it's difficult to learn just in general, right? You have to force yourself to learn, but if you're into the topic, it just comes. It's just like, man, I can free flow on this, and I can do this for hours, and I can just really invest. Yeah, man. Yeah. Like, I remember, what was like your favorite military course you ever went to?
Man, I've been to a couple that are really good. Technical wise, surreptitious entry, where you learn lock picking and breaking into cars and shit, and then you do all this stuff like you break into somebody's house and you steal shit.
It's awesome
because that's what I did as a kid, just stealing shit. And I think the sniper school for me was one of my favorite courses.
You think about how technical of a skill that is, but it's a skill.
Yeah,
and
it had nothing to do with shooting. I mean, it had a lot to do with shooting,
right.
But that's not what a sniper is.
No.
Your field craft was just as important as your ability to shoot a sniper weapon system. And that actually is, if you're shooting sniper rifles, you're probably making a mistake, because observation and reconnaissance is part of that whole deal. So the technology and the technical side of it, the observation, the field craft, the ghillie suits, the land navigation, all of that shit was so fun to me. That was my favorite part. I dreamt about that because I played it as a kid, and then you grow up and you get to do that as an adult. Like, we get to put on ghillie suits and crawl around the woods. Like, bro, that's the best job on the planet.
I mean, you remember the first time you threw a grenade?
Yeah.
Dude, it was awesome, right? It was like, my point in that is, when you go to sniper school, there's a host of different skills that go into that. There's like a bunch of different technical specifics that go into this, and you're learning something that directly enhances your life forever. When you're going to sit at a desk, can you imagine if sniper school was only taught from a desk, and you're somebody sitting in the front of the classroom, and they were just blah, 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 like a Charlie Brown, fucking Charlie Brown. And it's like, you never got to implement any of that stuff. It was just an academic institution.
It's most of the world.
Yeah,
most
right?
of the country, at least. Yeah.
And so you never actually got to implement it. Physics is a great example of that. Physics should be fun and interactive and in the field, and watching shit like smash into each other, and like seeing the interactive, weights and measures and how gravity works and all these like really fun and interactive things. And it's like, nah, man, this is a combine. We're going to chew you up. We're going to put you into a system. And if you don't succeed, you're kicked out of the system. And we don't care. And I'm not saying we, but academics don't care, because they're looking for other people like them.
Yeah.
They're looking for other people that you're an elitist, or I shouldn't say that, because not all of them are like that. My cousin's an academic, and he's a fucking bad motherfucker.
Well, most of them are average at best,
Yeah, they just.
But you ever like I have a bachelor's degree, and every single one of my professors wasn't the subject matter expert at their particular field. Like you get an MBA, the dudes who manage and profess the MBA, most of them don't have business experience. Mm-hmm. And like I'm taking an MBA class, I took a couple MBA classes, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? No. Like I'm getting taught by a dude about marketing, and I know more about marketing because I run a small business than the dude who's supposed to be professing, and he's just really regurgitating literature from a book.
Yeah,
and it's like that's what the academic experience for the most part is.
Well, that is when I first started Black Rifle, I was accepted into the Harvard Extension thing, which is not me being some kind of weird flex, but
yeah, but it kind of was. Just
it's not meant to be.
Yeah,
it's like, but
it kind of was.
But thinking about it, I was it's like it's fucking just an online.
It's just Harvard,
but it's online. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, so, but it's still.
But my thought process was like, oh, I'm going to go on and do this. This is going to be really interesting. And then I thought about it more, and I really just diagnosed the problem that I'm trying to solve. And I said, or I had this conversation and debate with myself and came to the conclusion, it's just going to be easier for me to try to figure out how to solve this problem and go through each and every one of the steps to try to learn the skill, refine the skill, implement the skill, and then my grade will be defined based on whether or not I'm profitable. That's it. Not, oh, that's great. I mean, you go back to, you go to a university, you get an MBA, and they're going to give you a series of grades, but do they pay your mortgage? No. You're going to, and I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody. I'm just saying you're going to end 2.5 years of your life in debt, more than likely. And will you have determined whether or not you can turn a profit and feed your family, pay your mortgage, pay your insurance? No. You still have to go out and prove that. Well,
it's all theory.
It's all theory.
Yeah.
And if guys can do it that didn't graduate high school, why do I need an MBA in order to do this? Like Zuckerberg didn't have a fucking MBA. Like, name the guy. I don't like. Really there's not. Like Zuckerberg, Musk, fucking. Who's the other?
Sam Walton.
Yeah, like none of these guys had MBAs. Like not one.
Johnny Morse.
Johnny Morse doesn't have an MBA. Like he's got a business degree, but he doesn't have an MBA.
I had an MBA consultant once come into my company.
Yeah.
And tell me, basically, what you have, you don't even have a business. And I was like, what? And he laid out his case, and I'm like, bro, that's called the business. We have a business. And because he had the MBA, because he had the book experience, the academic experience, he thought literally he was the subject matter expert at business. I'm like, bro, you're using academic bullet points that you're reading out of a book. I live that every single day in every facet of this business. Every facet of the business that exists now, I did at one time by myself. Marketing, sales, phone calls, customer service relationships, CPM, CRM, all the things, I lived that by myself. Like, you're literally coming here with a book referencing notes from your academic experience. That's the problem with the academic system. The 4 years or the 6 years or the 8 years it takes you to get your academic degree is many years of real-time experience that you could learn on the streets.
Well, yeah, you know how I learned...
In the streets.
You know how I learned Excel? YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, not YouTube and Udemy. Have you ever seen that? Like, it's like a series of courses. No, Coursera. So it's like YouTube and Coursera.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Like, dude, I was a fucking knuckle dragger.
You had to
so I was like, okay, I gotta figure this out. I gotta go through and figure out how do I build formulas? How do I plug this in so it makes sense? And not only that, how to replicate this and then have multiple different people feeding me data that I can plug in and then scale in order to feed to other people. Oh, well, there's a system for this. It's called fucking spreadsheet Excel. Okay, cool. All right, well, go to YouTube. Go to YouTube and I start doing research. And then pretty soon it kicks me over to Coursera. And then from Coursera, I started taking courses. And then I brought another guy in. And actually, it was Charles Waldron's brother, the employee number 2. I would go over to his house, and he would show me, because I would have now an interactive session with him. He would show me, hey, and he worked in finance. He worked for Morgan Stanley. So then I would sit left seat, right seat, and I would go through and ask a bunch of questions because there'd be some things I would miss. And be like, all right, but how do I do this? Can I do this if I add this? And he would just show me because he's a fucking wizard with it. And that's how I ran the entire fucking, like literally my entire financial portion of this company was run off spreadsheets up until like 2 years ago. 2 years. And it's still a lot of it is. And it was all built on something I had zero background in, that I had to accelerate my education and then go find the information. I'd be on my computer at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out Excel. How do I do this? How do I do that? Just general curiosity. More importantly, it was necessity. I gotta solve this problem. What is that? Necessity is the mother of invention. I would say necessity is also the proper motivation to get the job done. Anyway, what else do you want to talk about? Do you want?
Well, I want to talk about that one thing.
Which one?
What is it called? That show.
Science Max.
Leave the World Behind.
Oh, Leave the World Behind. Who is this?
You haven't seen anything about this?
Bro, I have been.
I just did a post on it. You don't.
I have been on hardcore no TV. Hardcore.
Not even YouTube?
Yeah, I do. I don't count that.
Yeah, okay, then I don't do TV either.
No,
this
I'm
is the
saying
first
like
time.
Fictional TV.
Yeah,
I don't do any of that.
I don't even like Netflix. I have it because my kids.
Yeah.
And they watch kids stuff on Netflix. But people have been like, you got to watch Leave the World Behind. We got to watch Leave the World Behind. And the last time we had this conversation was about the show that you turned me on to, which was, what was it called?
The Last of Us.
The Last of Us,
God,
which was
I love that
fun.
show. Such a good
It
show.
was fun. It kind of there was some episodes in there that got wonky.
Yeah, where the gay couple was
I'm just
hanging out.
it was cute, and they were a cute gay couple, and it was like the whole storyline though was like, is this part of it? And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's actually in the storyline,
Yeah, it is because it's a
part of the
video
game.
Yeah.
I actually bought the game, and I don't even play video games.
Is it any good?
I don't know. I haven't played it. I just bought it because I don't know. It was weird. I went through this whole journey. Leave the World Behind is about a cyber attack that hits the country, but it starts in New York and spreads like wildfire and shuts down the infrastructure. And then it's basically electromagnetic pulse type thing. And I haven't watched the whole thing because I'm saving the last part.
So is it a series?
No, it's just a movie.
Oh,
which
okay,
sucks because once it's 2 hours and 20 minutes, it's one and done, and there's no talk
Movies.
about a second one. Dude, this should be. I want to do the endless endeavor. Like I want to do a fiction version of the apocalypse that goes on forever.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop because it wouldn't stop. But it's
Well,
interesting.
The Walking Dead came out really good.
Yeah.
For the first, let's say, 5 seasons
Yeah.
before it just kind of pitched off a cliff and became
Yeah.
kind of just nonsense.
Yeah, because
It's
I mean, it's a loop, and there's not
the
really
same.
progression. But in this situation with like a post apocalyptic event like a EMP / cyber attack / infrastructure grid going down, you could start lining out some things. Anyways, 2 main points. One, jets started falling out of the sky, and most planes that are small planes are fly by wire, like they use mechanical processes.
They're actually wires.
Wires. Yeah. Rods, wires,
Mm-hmm.
Hydraulic lines, all the things. When you look at commercial planes, they're not. They're fully integrated into electronics and technology.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them have fail-safes, but they're heavily dependent on GPS technology, on electronic technology, on emergency technology that's integrated into the plane. If an EMP attack happened and it hit a plane, it would likely crash. That's the general consensus, is it will go down. Now, will it fall out of the sky? No, because it's still got lift. It's still flying, but it likely won't be able to do the things that it could do, even when manual processes allow you to take control. It'd still crash.
Right.
And then the other component was there was a scene that's pretty controversial where it shows a highway and all these Teslas crashing into each other, and they're being autopiloted to a specific GPS coordinate, which is the location on the highway, and they're just frapping into each other on autopilot. And so one of the questions was, would that happen? And technically it could happen because there are GPS and internet linked and controlled. Like they're satellite linked and controlled, because that's how they do the firm updates. That's how they upload and download software that's tethered to the camera systems. And so that technically did happen. The other question was, if there was no electric grid, could you use solar panels? You could, but I am very experienced in solar technology and panels, and it would take you a long time. Like, I think the Tesla Model 3, it would take you 10 days of 10 to 12 hours of continuous sunshine and perfect conditions to fully charge a Tesla Model 3. And I actually think that's bullshit, because I've tried to charge small electronic devices and lithium batteries like Goal Zeros using that. And it would have to be so optimal. You'd literally manually have to articulate the solar panels as the sun's coming across the sky. So it's doable, but just not at the rate in which people can functionally utilize their Tesla. So fossil fuels is likely to be the best protocol, and most people don't have EMP-proof vehicles, which is why we're building one.
Which is prior to
well, there's no specific year, because it depends, right? It depends on the make and model. GM, Ford, all introduce PCU, ECU technology into their vehicles at different times. But generally speaking, if you have a carbureted vehicle that's not fuel injected, you're likely good in one component of it. Because the ECU typically was tethered to fuel injection, which regulated obviously the fuel and the timing. And then that's how diagnostically you determine whether something was wrong with your vehicle. So everything was tied to electronics. So if you have carbureted engine, think small crate 350, you likely are good. And then the only electronic components were tied to the 12-volt system that are regulating lights, interior lights, your radio, etc. So you could have a dumb car and still be EMP compromised, but it would only affect certain components of the vehicle. Like the 12-volt system, typically that's running accessories, for example.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Because I thought about it from, like, I have an old 77 Ford just sitting there.
That's a good vehicle.
That's what it's for.
Yeah. I have a 73 Land Cruiser. I had a 73 Land Cruiser, and now I have the 80 FZJ 94, which will be half compromised. But
which is the extended cab flatbed?
No, it's a Land Cruiser. So it's the FZJ 80 is the 1993 to 96, 97 Land Cruiser. 98 Land Cruiser.
Okay, I was thinking that had the flatbed on it. What do you think about Land Rovers?
Pieces
the
of shit.
The Defender 90, Defender 110.
New ones are old.
Old.
I've used them. I mean, I've literally helped my 18 Charlie, my SF engineer, chop them to use in Afghanistan, and we rode around in Defender 110s because the United Nations left them behind, and we chopped them. They're problematic. They have a lot of issues, but they're solid axle, simple pieces of equipment.
Why do you think those are known? And I mean, I have my theory on this. Why do you think they're known as the safari vehicle internationally?
Part of the reason is torque specs, solid axles and locking differentials, and also the drivetrain. Most of them have turbo diesel engines, which is more efficient in getting torque to the ground. And so you always associate with them because in the countries, New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, there's not heavy regulations on emissions. And so they could actually carry a higher payload. Like your average Tacoma, here's the disparity in the overland space. Everybody wants to have the backcountry Land Rover in the middle of the Serengeti. That position and perspective is based on turbo diesel, solid axle drivetrains of getting it done. You migrate that to America, you can't have any of that. I mean, you can have solid axles, but most vehicles now have independent front suspension. They don't have turbo diesel because of emissions. And so the low capacity is completely and utterly handicapped. So your average overseas vehicle that we drove in, the Land Cruiser, the Land Rover, had heavy load capacities. You could 2,000 plus pounds.
Yeah.
You take that and transition it to Tacoma, and you're talking about 1,000 pounds to include the passengers in the vehicle. So you can carry a couple 100 pounds extra of shit before you compromise suspension, brakes, safety, drivetrain, and the list goes on.
Right.
So, and you're running with independent front suspension. So there's no real good bridge because what you see overseas is not what you get in America. And the first thing a guy does when he buys a Toyota Tacoma, he puts steel front bumper, steel rear bumper, steel rock sliders, and a couple 100 pound Warren winch, and he's completely exceeded the capability of the vehicle. That's how it works. And overseas, you just don't have those restrictions, which is why it is the ISIS vehicle of choice, because you could put a Zuki, a 14.5 millimeter anti-aircraft gun, with the ammo and the loadout and the terrorist, and you're still not meeting low capacity.
Why don't you import a Hilux then?
You could. It's a 25-plus year rule on Hiluxes. They certainly have them in America.
25-plus year?
So you can import any vehicle that's 25 years or older to America, which I have a 94 right-hand Land Cruiser that has a 1.8Z turbo diesel engine in it, and it has a huge load capacity. And it's super capable, but there aren't a lot of parts for that vehicle in America.
Got it.
The best option, which is the vehicle that I'm building an EMP-proof vehicle in, I'm building 3 vehicles this year. A 392 Jeep, which is the V8.
Pretty sweet.
I'm building an EMP-proof vehicle, EMP-proof version of that, which is a lot of work because it is highly electronic. I'm building a Ranger, a Ford Ranger, turbo diesel stick shift version of that because it has solid axles. Actually, I don't know if that's true. I think it has independent front suspension, rear solid axle. And I'm building a Ford Raptor. The F-150 is a new design. I'm building one with Camberg and what's the exhaust company? Whatever. Camberg Racing is helping us build the ultimate bug-out vehicle.
Do those have buckets?
Each one should come standard with a bucket, white preferably, with a Black Rifle coffee sticker on it. And that would have little effect on the low capacity of those vehicles, but be a huge asset. Huge
asset.
When shit hits the fan, like you have to poop,
get your bucket.
Get your bucket.
Get your bucket.
Do you know how much shit you can carry in that bucket?
I do. I have a bucket. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Good to hear you, buddy.
Good to hear you.